Hey everybody, it's Barbara. And what you're about to see is my very first video where I have actually received product as a direct result of a conversation with a doll company. What you're going to see in the first half of this video is a review I shot a couple of weeks ago of the first series of Mizi dolls in lingerie, and the second series, which is called the Timeless Collection. The first two dolls I received, particularly the lingerie doll, were extremely problematic in quality. Again, you'll see this during the review. It was frankly a bad doll. There was a breakdown in quality control at the factory. I don't like doing negative reviews. And I was concerned that maybe, and this does happen, folks, maybe I just hit the bad lottery and got a couple of bad dolls. So I reached out to my dealers, who in turn reached out to one of the company's directors. And I had a long chat with him on Instagram, which I will say a lot more about in a few minutes. And we talked about the dolls. So again, the first thing you're going to see right now is the original review of the Brunette lingerie doll and the Timeless Collection Fatima. And then I'm going to explain to you what happened after I shot that video. Hey everybody, it's Barbara. And the long-awaited Mizi fashion doll is here. I actually have wound up with two Mizis. One is from the initial run of lingerie-clad dolls, as you will see in a second. And the second is the introduction of some of Mizi's new friends. And I will say more about that in a second, but first let's just go ahead and take a look at the packaging. This is not a company that is spending a lot of money on packaging right now. I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just saying the packaging is not going to be a big selling point. Basically comes in what is called a coffin box, or at least the initial run did. And you open it to reveal a doll that is tied incorrectly and very loosely into the box. If you will note, she's not even tied in to the footrest. That's actually something of a surprise, but it happens to be happening with both dolls. As you can see, her friend is also posed in the box, and they're not supposed to be. A friend of mine who is a dealer has already reported this to the actual makers of the company, so maybe they can be a little bit more on the ball with this. Let's go ahead and take a look at the box of Mizi's friend. Her name is Fatima, by the way. And this is the third of 150 for Fatima's run. And again, this has got a little bit of a peekaboo box to it, but again, there isn't too much more to this than the actual box, and what I suspect will be the case. If there is a certificate of authenticity, it will be in the bottom of the box. Let's just quickly take a look and see if that is the case. Nope, there is no certificate of authenticity. At least not in this one, and I don't think there is in that one either, but I will quickly look at that to confirm. By the way, I don't think the doll maker actually tied the dolls into the box. I think this was a factory issue. And factory issues will inevitably be addressed at some point. And no, again, there is no certificate. So they're doing this very bare bones, which is understandable when you are a doll company just starting out. The idea is supposed to be the focus is on the doll and not on anything else. So let's find out just what exactly we have here in these two lovely ladies. Folks, you're going to hear something from me in this review that you don't usually hear. And it's a lot of negative comments. But I also feel like since it's a new doll line, you need to know this, and you need to know that when you're selling a doll at a $90 price point, there are things that are not acceptable. And we're going to start with the back of her head, which, as you can see, has a very large and pronounced bald spot. Her weaving is not done well at all. It is very thin hair. It is not styled well. It was not properly placed in the hairnet. I would basically have to comb this out and restyle it. It was as if the person who decided to do the hair just didn't care. To turn her back around, her face is not terrible. She does have very nice, well-applied lashes. If I can come in a little bit closer. This is about as close as I can get this way, so I'm going to move the camera in a little bit more and lift it up. Her eye makeup is nothing at the top of the lid, brown where the two lids meet, and then a glossy peach at the lower lid before her eyes are heavily lined in black. And her lashes, her top lashes at least, are real. They are applied. And I'm going to turn her sideways so you can see them against the bridge of her nose. You can see they're very nicely done. Her ears are not pierced, by the way. This particular Mizi does not come with pierced ears. Very little blush. And her lips are a neutral mauve. Her ensemble is a bustier that closes with hook and eye in the front and comes with black briefs, which unacceptably do not fit her. They are loose. I almost feel like they went and stole some of, and I'm just going to say it, they went and stole integrity briefs and put them on a doll that was smaller in hip than an integrity doll. The outfit itself, it's fine, but she's falling out of it. It's too big for her. You know, a $90 doll, you don't put her in clothes that she's falling out of. This is not a doll that should be Who Did Me and Ran. She has very obvious hand joints. First of all, the shoulder joints are looser on Mizi than you would traditionally see them on Fashion Royalty or on Barbie Silkstone that is posable. And as I said, the wrists are much more exposed than you are used to seeing. And this is me not pushing them in. This is an exposed wrist joint, which you are not used to seeing. When I did the review for the first time, I almost called her an action figure because the joints were so exposed. And usually you don't see this on a fashion doll, but you would see it on a female action figure. So I'm not quite sure what they were trying to go for here. If they were trying to do a hybrid body, okay, but even on an action figure, loose joints in the arms are not acceptable. Her knee joints, and I will take the camera off the pedestal and show you, her knees are also very loose. And that is equally not okay. She does not have an ankle joint. What she does have are shoes that don't fit her. They are too big for her feet. And she has a stand that is poorly constructed. This is the stand. As you can see, it's sort of like a classic Mattel stand, but again, at least when you put it in with Mattel, everything stays in place. Here, everything is incredibly loose. So, from top to bottom, unfortunately, this particular Mitzi has a lot more problems than she should have. And especially, I mean, I understand that this is an introductory doll, but this is ridiculous. I'm not even sure somebody who does repaints would want her or would want to deal with this. So, yeah, this Mitzi is not okay. And let's take a few minutes now and go ahead and take a look at the next doll, which is going to be Fatima. And let's see if she's any better. Okay, so here's Fatima. And we'll start again. Again, I'm noticing just from trying to pose her that her joints are equally as loose as Mitzi's. But at least on the plus side, her hair is much better rooted. It is much fuller than Mitzi's, and it is better rooted. And there's more attentiveness to the hair. The product is in the right place. It's holding the curls. It's not a hot mess. It's not as fully rooted as it could be, but it is a definite improvement over the previous hair job. She's also got pierced ears, as you will notice, and very nice gold hoops. I like these. This may be my favorite part of this review, is the hoops are very nicely executed. And just to pull out one earring to show you. This appears to be the same thickness as an Integrity Toys earring, so you could probably switch earrings between them. And she did come with her earrings in, which I personally like, because then I didn't have to go and make the effort to light up a pin and pierce her ears, which is always a tricky thing. Her lashes again are real, and they are applied. They are a decent length on her face. She again has a nude upper brow with bronzy tones where the lids meet, and on the lower lid it is a definite copper bronze. She also has that same mauve lip that Mitzi had. She is wearing, as you can see, a nicely done fur. It is soft and it is lined. To keep her posed, there's a little bit of elastic here so it stays on her arms. But as I said again, the wrist joint is obvious. It's very loose. The entire arm is very loose. Her legs are very loose. Her knees are very loose. And again, the shoes are not the best fitting shoes in the world. And like with Mitzi, this heel is fine. The right heel is fine. The left heel is very, very weak. And Mitzi came with 2 pairs of slingbacks, and on both of them, the heels were unacceptably loose and ill-fitting. As you can see, by the way, Fatima is wearing an olive green swimsuit It's tailored nicely around her. This actually fits her right. It's very nicely tailored around her. It's not loose in the wrong places. And it closes in the back with hook and eye. So what I'm going to do now in the final part of this review, I'm going to do the measurements again. So in case you ever want to compare measurements between Fashion Royalty and Mizi and Fatima, you will be able to do that. And I will put a link in the description below to previous reviews that I've done where I've done the measurements between the dolls. But in the final section, I'll just be doing Fatima, and you can watch the other video to compare the measurements. So I've actually given up and switched over to an FR stand. That is how badly made Fatima's stand is. And by the way, again, the stand does not come with Mizi, it came with Fatima, so it should have been able to hold the doll it was made for, and it couldn't. So, your standard tape measure. From the shoulder to the tips of her fingers, her arm is 4.5 inches. And her hand itself, from this fully exposed wrist joint to the tip, is 1 inch. And by the way, folks, yes, I am using the American standard of inches. That is, if I have any international folks, I'm sorry. And if I do have international folks and you'd like me to go back and redo the videos and do centimeters, this is a double-sided measuring tape. I can do it with the centimeters, and I will, but you got to tell me you want to see it. Because otherwise, nope. So, going back to the measurements, her chest is 5.5 inches at its midpoint. And her wrist is an incredibly small 3 3/4 inches. Her hip, such as it is, which is not saying much because she really doesn't have one. Her hips are 4 inches. Just about. It actually will probably come in. You see how much trouble I'm having holding her steady? Her hips are actually going to come in at... No, it is 4 inches. Now this is going to be harder, doing the leg. I have to use one hand to hold. She's not going to stand on her own, so I have to basically use one hand to hold her in place and the other hand to get the tape. So sorry about that. I'm almost tempted not to do this and just to shoot an ending. But in case anyone wants to get her, from hip to the tips of her toes, it is 7 inches. The thigh from hip to knee joint is just under 3.5 inches. And from knee joint to the tip of her foot is 4. And her foot, which is arched, by the way, is going to come in at 1/2 inch in total. If it was flat, it would be 1/2 inch. So I don't quite know how this will work out in terms of wanting to make clothes for her. Frankly, ladies and gentlemen, and to be brutally honest, Let me cover her up because I know there are those who are sensitive to doll nudity. To be brutally honest, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot, in good conscience, recommend this figure. Because if you're asking somebody to pay $90 for a doll, that doll should be sturdy. It should come with accessories that fit. The hair should be done well. And the stand should be appropriate. And none of that is the case with this doll, or with Fatima, or with Mizi. That is not the fault of the dealers. That is the fault of the factory. And that is the fault of the company that decided to release these dolls without doing a whole lot of quality control. So for the first time I'm ever going to say this, guys, I'm going to have to say take a pass on the first 2 runs of the Mizi dolls until they get a lot better with their quality control. So as you can see, I was very unimpressed with the dolls. And I will admit, and you will hear this through the next part of the review, I do still have some reservations. But I also had a really good conversation with Jason of Jason and Dimon, aka J&D Dolls, who put out Mizi dolls. We talked about what's going on in the factory. We talked about that this is a new process for them, that they are learning on a curve, that they are trying to keep up with demand, and that going forward, the company is going to be working much harder with issues of quality control. And this includes the fact that they now have someone permanently stationed at the factory to make sure what happened with the first series, the lingerie dolls, does not happen again with the second series or any further series. So the next 2 dolls I'm going to review were given to me at the courtesy of J&D Dolls. It is another lingerie doll. This one's a blonde. And that should be very interesting to you because I review blondes, but I don't usually seek them out. Though I've bought the East 59th Street dolls and they're blonde now that I think about it, but blondes are not usually at the top of my list, but this is a very nice blonde. I'll say more about that in a second. And I also have their, again, as part of their Timeless collection, their take on Sabrina, which has now been done 3 times. Once by Mattel, once by Integrity, and now by J&D Dolls. I want to make this very clear so there's no misunderstanding and I don't get busted by YouTube. I did not ask J&D for these dolls. They offered them. And I told J&D flat out that I was going to review them and that if they were still problematic, I would say so. I don't believe these dolls to be as problematic as the first run. So I think ultimately, and again, I'll say more about this during the actual review, I think I hit the bad lottery. But I also think it's important to be honest and to show you both parts so you understand where this is coming from. So let's go ahead now and look at the other 2 dolls. So here they are. The dolls that, again, I received from J&D Dolls. I did not pay for them. I did not ask for them, but they were given to me as a way of showing what the company is really trying to do. And in the spirit of that, I agreed to accept them. This is not to say, though, that this is completely all better. There are still some issues, again, particularly with the lingerie doll. So let's send Sabrina to the corner for a minute and focus on this lovely lady. Um, starting from the stand. This stand is a much better stand. It is sturdier. It is put together better. I feel much more comfortable using it when posing the doll. I should say though, this stand came with Sabrina. It does not come with a lingerie doll. But it does do a better job of holding up the doll, and so I'm using it for her. Going back and turning her around, as you can see in comparison to what you saw in the first half of the video, this is a much better rooted hair. First of all, the product, there is product in it, which is going to happen, especially when you have curls like this. This is a much better rooted doll. The hair is in much better shape. It is not as completely rooted as it could be, because it's very easy for me to do this and get to the skull of the doll. But again, the rooting is in much better shape than the brunette. But as you can see here, again, there is problem with the fit of the lingerie. The panties are simply too big for her. And so is the bustier. Though you don't see that as much because I have the brace of the stand on it, which is kind of fitting it in and holding it in a little bit better. But yes, this is a little too loose on her. Again, that's the bad news. What's the good news? The good news is it's extra lingerie for Barbie and Integrity if you want to go down that lane. Also, by the way, I don't think I've ever seen Integrity do a white bustier like this, which is very bridal wedding night, so that's a nice thing to have. Her eye makeup is fine. It's a neutral palette. These are browns. Very, very light brown on the bottom lid. Nothing on the top lid. Some brown at the part where the two lids meet. She has very nice lashes. They are applied. And they proceed a rather decent length away from her eye. This is supposed to be a doll set in the 1930s. And having now seen, not to jump between companies, but having now seen the Disney dolls in the 12-inch size and the Snow White premiere doll, the eye makeup and the lashes are very similar. So I get a sense of what they're trying to do. And just by the way, just to finish off the paleting, on her eyes are completely lined in brown, which is a nice choice given how pale her skin is and the honey blonde hair. And she has a neutral lip, which is actually a shade I've been known to wear on occasion. To finish with the doll, she is wearing white stockings. Nothing particularly special about them. Standard issue white stockings. And she has on white heels with the double loop detail in the front. They're not overly sturdy as shoes, but they're not as wobbly as the black heels were either. And I should note that when I got the brunette did not come with stockings. She came with 2 pairs of shoes to sort of make up for it, which really wasn't making up for much. So this is all in all, I think, a much better example of what they were trying to do. But I think I should say that if it became obvious that as the run continued and the people in the factory were becoming more and more careless, particularly as I heard with the brunette doll, which is the one that I got, then I think they should have just pulled the dolls and waited until they could be repaired. So that's the lingerie. I should tell you as I pull her over that Sabrina is not on, again, she's not on the stand she came with. I've decided to use an FR stand, mostly because it's sturdier and because this is a much heavier gown. She is in a dress satin gown in keeping with the style of Sabrina, the movie, particularly Audrey Hepburn, which is interesting because that movie did not come out until the 1950s, and Audrey Hepburn was not a big hit until the 1950s. So, yes, obviously this look is timeless and should be part of someone's timeless collection. But if you're trying to also keep it to the 1930s, this is 2 decades ahead of that, and a lot had changed in terms of what women were allowed to get away with fashion-wise. Much product in her hair again, which is fine. It's not my most favorite, but most people don't care. She has this beautiful curl in the back, again, keeping with the way she would have looked in the movie. She doesn't have any jewelry around her neck. I'm going to talk about the dress in a second, but I will just say very quickly here that this will close with hook and eye. To turn her again, I want to show you that we do get something very special with Sabrina, and that is the earring. The earring is an earring that we have never got. I have yet to see. I've not seen it in Mattel. I've not seen it in Integrity. It looks very much like a snowflake. It's very, very, very nice. I would absolutely want more of these. This is a kind of stud that I would very much want more of, so I'm very glad to have it. It is like right up there with my favorite. It's my second favorite part of this doll, frankly. Her eye makeup is a little bit more detailed than the lingerie doll. The top of the lid again does not have very much eyeshadow, though there is a very, at the right where you go right above the gray lining here, there is just the hint of a very snowy white gray shadow. Otherwise, her eyes are lined in a gray brown, which matches her actual eye color. And again, she has very long lashes, and she has a very red lip. The dress itself, as I said, is silk, and the way that they decided to put this dress together is this part, the ball gown part, is removable. It wraps around like this, so it'll attach from the side. It is lined, and it includes a tulle ruffle at the bottom. And when you remove this, what you are left with is a really nice sheath dress, black and white, with the detailing at the bodice, and starting from just above the knee going to the bottom of the dress. This is much better tailored on her than the lingerie is. It fits. It is not coming off. It is not too loose. Can't say the same about the gloves. The gloves are, they look a little weird to me, but then again, her hand, and this is also true of the lingerie dolls, her hands are a little bit bigger than the fashion royalty Mattel dolls. Her nails are also, by the way, not painted, so she has an unpainted nail. And again, you do have the very visible joints. Although these joints, I have much more control over them. I can pose her, as you saw, I had her posed with a hand on her hip, like so, and she can hold that pose, and I don't have to worry about anything. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say this, that if you're trying to do the Disney doll and you can't actually get your hands on it, or you want to try to kit bash it, this would not be a bad Snow White. If you wanted to redo that look, you can kit bash that look with this figure. Now, P.S. by the way, I've not seen the Disney body, so I have no idea what the Disney body is going to look like. Just to conclude, we have again Very plain black heels. And as you can see, again, by the way it's bending, they're not exactly the sturdiest of shoes, but at least they fit. And will stay on. The rubber band is there, by the way, just because that's how she came, and I took the rubber band off of one. I actually took these dolls when I went to visit my friend, and we looked at them together, and I did want to have a second set of eyes on the dolls, because frankly, again, I didn't want to be a witch. I didn't want to be overly critical. I try not to be that person. So for me to say the things I said in the first half of this video, what does that tell you? So ultimately, where do we go from here? What should I tell you? What are my final thoughts? Well, let me put the dolls back together, and I will share those final thoughts with you. So here are my final thoughts. I do not believe that J&D are a corrupt company or they're trying to swindle doll collectors. I believe that they're a very honest company. I believe that they are I believe that they're doing their very best. I believe that they are taking very seriously the comments they are receiving from individual doll buyers like myself and from the dealers who have agreed to deal in their dolls. I believe that with each run of this series, you're going to see a market improvement over the previous line. I think if you want to buy the lingerie dolls or one from the first series, I would stick with the blondes and not the darker hair dolls. I think you should definitely go ahead, and if you want to invest in the Timeless series, I think you certainly should. I think Sabrina in particular and Fatima are very nice dolls, and I certainly invite you to take a look at them. I look forward, frankly, to seeing what the next line is going to be and how they proceed from here. I think they're going to move in a very positive direction, and one that's going to produce still yet even better quality dolls. I would like to thank DeniseDolls, Denise Travers, and Rudi Teruel of DeniseDolls, both of whom were my dealers. Denise gave me the lingerie doll. I bought Fatima from Rudi. They were both very responsive to my concerns. They are the ones who put me in touch with J&D dolls. I would like to thank Jason for talking to me for a long period of time. Even with the time difference, we still spoke for about an hour via text message on Instagram, and he was incredibly cooperative and responsive. I would like to thank him for making available to me the two dolls that you see in the background. I would like to thank him for also being very responsive to my concerns and understanding the nature of my review and the integrity that I try to bring to them. Pun not intended. So thank you for listening to all of this and for understanding what I'm trying to say. And my final thought is, ultimately, in terms of playability, much more so the clothing than the actual dolls themselves. If you get the lingerie dolls, understand you're basically buying them for the lingerie to redress them. Get the Timeless collection for the complete package, both the dolls and the accessories. And let's see what they do going forward. For me, Barbara, and for Mizi and her collections, I will see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.